It comes equipped with labs, a gym, sleeping quarters, 2 bathrooms, and the view is literally out of this world.
Liftoff of the Proton rocket and the Zarya control module.
The first segments of the International Space Station were launched in 1998, and since 2000, the ISS has continuously housed a rotating group of astronauts from 19 countries. At about 250 miles above the Earth, the International Space Station occupies an area known as low Earth orbit, or LEO, and houses the only laboratory available for long-duration microgravity research. This research has been instrumental in a number of scientific developments, including creating more efficient water filtration systems and exploring new ways to treat diseases such as Alzheimer's and cancer. But it's starting to show its age.
Astronauts launched a very complicated series of spacewalks today to fix a cosmic ray detector at the International Space Station.
But NASA will likely not build the next space station. Instead, the agency will depend on the technology of outside companies. A few, like Colorado-based Sierra Space, are well on their way to constructing their own commercial space station. As space enters the commercial age, here's what a new International Space Station may look like. Over the last couple of years, NASA has increasingly relied on outside companies to complete tasks that have traditionally been reserved for the government agency. Under its Commercial Resupply Services program, NASA has contracts with SpaceX and Northrop Grumman to send cargo resupply missions to the ISS. Last year, SpaceX made history by becoming the first private sector company to carry NASA astronauts to the ISS under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Boeing is also under contract as part of the program, but is still conducting uncrewed tests. The Commercial Crew and Commercial Resupply programs are largely considered a success for NASA. Last year, the agency estimated that the Commercial Crew program saved the government between $20 and $30 billion. Since SpaceX and Boeing each designed their own spacecraft under the contract, NASA had the added benefit of having a backup in case something should happen with one of the vehicles. This has proved wise, as Boeing has struggled to get its spacecraft certified for human flight. NASA is now hoping to replicate the success of its Commercial Crew and Commercial Cargo programs with the Commercial LEO Destinations project. As part of the project, NASA plans to award up to $400 million in total to as many as 4 companies to begin development of private space stations. Covering just part of the developmental cost of the station would be a big money saver for NASA. The ISS cost $150 billion to build, and the US picked up the largest chunk of that bill ahead of its partners Russia, Europe, Japan, and Canada. NASA also spends about $4 billion a year to operate the ISS. A number of private companies are already well on their way to launching private space stations. One of the companies at the forefront of creating a commercial space station is Houston-based Axiom Space. In fact, back in 2020, NASA awarded the company a $140 million contract to provide at least one habitable module to attach to the International Space Station. Axiom Space plans on starting out with 4 modules. The first 2 will be crew quarters that will be decked out with infotainment systems and massive windows overlooking Earth. Some space will also be reserved for research and technology development projects. The third module will be geared strictly towards research and manufacturing, and the fourth will be a solar array, so that Axiom's modules can separate and operate independently from the ISS when it's eventually retired. Funding for its new space station will also likely come from Axiom's private astronaut missions. Axiom has a deal with SpaceX to use the company's Crew Dragon capsule and Falcon 9 rocket to fly a total of 4 crewed missions to the ISS starting as early as January 2022. Although Axiom does not make the price of its private missions public, a flight with Axiom is estimated to cost tens of millions of dollars, as NASA pays SpaceX about $55 million per seat to fly its astronauts to the space station. But Axiom is confident that it can build a station that's much cheaper than the $150 billion NASA spent on the ISS. One of the ways Axiom's been able to bring down the cost of its space station is by utilizing technologies from other industries.
Our battery technology is very similar to electric vehicle battery technology. The computer chip in your iPhone, say an iPhone 10 or newer, is very, very similar to the chip that we'll use as our computer.
Axiom Space plans to launch its first module in 2024 and its 4th module toward the end of 2027. Sierra Space is another company that's been working on building a commercial space station. Since 2017, Sierra Space has been developing an inflatable structure that it calls the Life Habitat. Since then, Sierra Space has worked to adapt the design to also function as a habitat for the surface of Mars or the Moon, as well as act as a free-floating commercial station in low Earth orbit. The structure is 1/3 the volume of the International Space Station and spans 27 feet in both diameter and length. The mock-up we visited only had 2 floors, but the final version will have 3. The structure is meant to be inflated in space after it's launched.
It was about 40 missions to build the space station. We can have an operational space station up in 2 missions.
Sierra Space is also developing its own transportation vehicle called the Dream Chaser. Initially, Sierra Space believes its largest market will come from NASA and other countries' space agencies who want to conduct research in zero gravity. But down the road, the company hopes to supplement that revenue stream with more commercial activities, like manufacturing in space, tourism, and even TV and film production. Sierra Space says the initial elements of its space station will be in orbit by 2026 or 2027. The race is on for private sector companies to launch a commercial space station before the ISS is retired, likely within the decade. Both Axiom Space and Sierra Space say that they are confident that they can have an operational space station up and running in time. Another aerospace company, NanoRacks, plans to have its first private space stations up by 2024. But instead of building a whole new structure, NanoRacks plans to recycle the spent upper stages of rockets and transform them into research stations. But as with any space endeavor, timelines often change. Just take the Commercial Crew Program. The program's original goal was to send astronauts to the ISS by 2017, but early funding cuts and a number of failed tests delayed the launch until 2020. And not having a station finished in time could spell real trouble for NASA.
If we retire the International Space Station without having commercial space stations ready, there's going to be a gap in capabilities.
And NASA's already experienced such a gap. After the agency ended the shuttle program in 2011, NASA was forced to rely on Russian Soyuz rockets to launch its astronauts to the International Space Station. And the US paid Russia a pretty penny, over $90 million per seat. When SpaceX stepped in 2020, that cost was reduced to $55 million per seat. In fiscal years 2020 and 2021, NASA requested $150 million for low Earth orbit commercial development, but only received $15 million and $17 million respectively. In July, the House granted NASA $45 million for commercial LEO development, less than half of what the organization had requested. Commercial companies can also expect competition from other countries.
Tonight's launch is the country's first crewed flight in nearly 5 years, sending 3 astronauts to the space station it's building as it seeks to become a major spacefaring power by 2030.
Russia is also planning its own space station. Serving government customers like NASA can be a springboard to kickstart the LEO economy for commercial companies. But a larger private market will likely be the key to their long-term success, and potentially their biggest moneymaker. As for NASA, not having to invest in a space station will free up money for other endeavors.
We've had all of these years of success on the ISS, and NASA now wants to put our eye toward Moon and Mars and other exploration items and turn over this area of space to the commercial market.